Hello guys, welcome to the movie recap review. Happy watching.
He won't live long enough for me to punch out. Ah! Hold on! Hold on! Ah!
The higher that we fly, the lower the humidity.
The movie takes place in the 1860s. Amelia Renee rides in a horse-drawn carriage, but suddenly has a panic attack and jumps out. Her sister, Antonia, tries to stop her from going on her journey, but Amelia refuses. A young boy runs past them, heading toward a large venue where a gas balloon is about to take off, Amelia's true destination. At the balloon, scientist James Glacier waits impatiently for the launch. Amelia, the pilot, arrives in dramatic fashion, entertaining the crowd, much to James's annoyance. She insists on bringing her Jack Russell Terrier, Posey, despite James' objections. Just before takeoff, Amelia sees a vision of her late husband, Piers, but keeps up her brave front. As they ascend, she climbs above the ropes and shocks everyone by throwing Posey overboard, only to reveal the dog is wearing a parachute and lands safely. A flashback shows James presenting his theory on weather prediction to the Royal Society. His ideas are mocked, especially by Charles Green. At home, his parents urge him to pursue a different field of science. Meanwhile, in the sky, Amelia and James enjoy the breathtaking view until they hit a violent storm that spins the balloon, putting them in danger. Back on the ground, James' assistant, John True, enviously watches the balloon's ascent. The young boy from earlier asks to use his telescope, and John is surprised when the boy manages to spot the balloon. After her husband's death, Amelia is grieving when her sister, Antonia, convinces her to attend a society event. There, she meets James for the first time. He awkwardly claims to be attending with a friend who hopes to court a wealthy woman. Amelia finds him odd, but agrees to dance with him to avoid another suitor. During the dance, James asks if she would lend him her balloon and be his pilot so he can test his theories. Amelia soon realizes he came to the event just to meet her. She is furious, but ultimately agrees. Days later, as she begins assembling the balloon, Antonia urges her to give up aeronautics for a more conventional career. During the flight, James and Amelia barely survive several life-threatening moments, including James suffering a head injury. Despite the storm, they continue rising. As time passes, they begin to enjoy each other's company more. They also discover an air current filled with butterflies, proving a theory from James' assistant, John, which James had previously dismissed. However, when James tries to talk about her late husband, Pierre, Amelia refuses to discuss it. As they continue their ascent, they finally reach 23,000 feet, the current world record for the highest human flight. And James releases a pigeon carrying a message to Charles Green about their altitude. But Amelia soon realizes he didn't bring proper clothing for the extreme cold. She insists they start descending, but James refuses, leading to an argument. Amelia eventually agrees to keep rising, but only on the condition that they descend soon. Eventually, they reach over 26,000 feet, breaking the record for the highest human flight. James, initially focused only on scientific readings, starts appreciating the experience itself. He releases another pigeon and marvels at their journey. Before the flight, as James trains, Amelia approaches him and tells him she has changed her mind. James is devastated, knowing how much money has already been spent, but she remains firm and leaves. He breaks the news to his father, who is now suffering from dementia. However, when his father expresses pride in him, James decides not to give up. He desperately asks Charles Green to let him join a flight, but Green cruelly mocks him. Meanwhile, John visits Amelia and pleads on James' behalf. He shows her a book of James's research on snowflakes and explains how much the flight means to him. Later, Amelia visits Pierre's grave to talk to him about her decision. As snow begins to fall, she takes it as a sign and ultimately chooses to go with James after all. Back in the present, James releases a third pigeon, but he discovers the fourth has frozen to death. He tosses it overboard to reduce weight. As the temperature drops below freezing, Amelia insists they must descend. But James, now delirious from the cold, refuses. Determined to climb higher, he frantically throws equipment and sandbags overboard to speed up their ascent. The two struggle, and when James invokes Pierre's name, Amelia slaps him, snapping him back to his senses. Eventually, Amelia opened up to James about her husband. In an earlier flashback, Amelia and Pierre are on a balloon flight when disaster strikes, and they must lose weight quickly. After throwing everything else overboard, Pierre makes the ultimate sacrifice. He throws himself over the side to save Amelia, plunging to his death. He finally agrees. They need to descend. However, the air release valve at the top of the balloon is frozen shut. As James loses consciousness from the cold, Amelia realizes she has no choice but to climb outside the balloon to open it manually. Her task is made even harder by severe frostbite in one hand, but she pushes through. Reaching the top, she manages to kick the valve open just enough for the balloon to start descending. Exhausted and numb, she loses consciousness and begins to slip over the side. When Amelia wakes up, she is dangling upside down, saved only by a rope she had tied around herself. Regaining her bearings, she swings back to the balloon and desperately tries to wake James. For a terrifying moment, he appears lifeless, until he suddenly gasps awake. Relieved, they hold on as the balloon begins its slow but steady descent. As snow begins to fall around them, Amelia and James suddenly notice something strange. The snowflakes are hovering in front of them. They realize with horror that they are descending too quickly. The balloon is collapsing. They struggle to fully open the air release, and in the process, Amelia's shoe falls over the side. Seeing this, James finally understands that she had climbed over the balloon to save his life. But even with the valve open, it's not enough to slow them down. Desperate, they start throwing everything overboard. James carefully pockets his records before tossing the rest. Still, their descent remains too fast. With no other options, they climb onto the balloon's framework and cut the basket loose. Even that isn't enough. James then suggests turning the balloon itself into a parachute. Amelia, doubtful but with no better alternative, agrees. They cut the remaining ropes and the balloon billows out, slowing them, but not entirely. As they near the ground, they crash into trees. James falls onto the branches, breaking his fall, but Amelia slams into the ground hard and is dragged several feet before coming to a stop. When Amelia regains consciousness, she weakly calls for James. He stumbles toward her, battered but alive. Despite their injuries, they are overjoyed. They survived. Helping each other to their feet, they slowly make their way toward help. In a voiceover, Amelia explains that James's discoveries paved the way for the first weather reports. James delivers a triumphant speech to the Royal Society. This time, instead of mockery, he is met with thunderous applause. The film ends with James and Amelia, healed and undaunted, embarking on another balloon flight together.
And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Comment down below what movies do you like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.